Guys, finally we just arrived here, one of the most beautiful airports after Changi in Singapore. This is Doha. So I have a transfer. So guys, we are boarding again. Let's go. And finally guys, my face is shining. Welcome home. And finally,
Hello, Karibu nyumbani.
home. Be a drunk.
Welcome back to the channel. This is Max Lumumba Africa, and today I'll be telling us how D invaded Poland, how D managed to sneak into Poland through the back door. Today's conversation will be a real talk. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who have not subscribed to this amazing YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, and share this video to other individuals. Remember to turn on the notification bell so that any day, anytime I post any video, you people get notified. Watch my videos from the beginning up to the end without skipping those ads that you see there. Let us show love to this YouTube channel. Let us like all my videos. Ladies and gentlemen, D Mwango watches reactors, and she seems very fragile when it comes to criticism in the comment section. She recently put out a topic suggesting that she is a fragile girl. Her main defense appears to be rushing out to shame people, including poor shaming them while bragging that she has traveled to more than 80 countries and has seen more of the world than they have, without telling us what have you learned from those 80 plus countries. She often seems to use this as a defensive mechanism. She asks people, where have you been, or how many countries have you traveled to, as if traveling to more countries automatically makes her better than everyone else. This reminds me of a TikTok live where a follower asked her, why were you deported from Poland? Of course, she went into defensive mode and attacked the person asking where they have ever traveled and reminding them that she had been to more than 80 countries, and she never told people that what have I learned from these 80 countries. To me, that reaction says a lot about how sensitive she is in certain accusations. Her defensiveness has sometimes made her do things that, in my own opinion, end up making the situation worse of her. Recently, after they alleged miscarriage, she did a live stream, of which the live stream was out of control. She was messy, abusive, and very awkward. Now, D Mwango is in Poland. We know that from our content. But the question I want to ask is, how exactly did she enter Poland? I did my own investigation based on the videos she has posted, and I noticed something interesting. D may have entered, or D may have not entered Poland directly by air. They are trains connecting Poland with other European countries, so it is entirely possible to travel into Poland by train. In the video where she reunites with her husband, she is on a train, and she even talks about how the train is almost like an aeroplane. Then the footage cuts, and suddenly we see her in Poland. This is where I start asking questions. D Mwango is a type of a person who likes to show up, and from what I have seen, She likes to present her travels almost like a celebrity arrival. Whenever I watch her content, she is often showing us the flight she has taken or the airport she has landed at. Even in the same video, she lands in Doha and gives us a whole narrative about how Doha is the second best airport in the world apart from Singapore. Then she takes another flight into another country, which she did not clearly announce. After that, we suddenly see her on a train. Then the footage cuts again. The next thing, we see D and Pero walking a considerably distance with their suitcases. And that raises another question. What happened between the train journey and the point where we see them walking with their luggage? Not just small distance, yeah? They were walking a very long distance. I'm not saying I have a proof that D is illegal. Actually, D illegally entered Poland. I'm saying the footage leaves unanswered questions about her journey, and that's why I find it interesting. If she entered Poland legally by train from another European country, then there is nothing unusual about that. But if there were immigration restrictions of previous issues surrounding her entry into Poland, then people would naturally want to understand exactly what happened. This is why I think D needs to be very careful when dealing with authorities and when responding to questions about her traveling history. I have been watching D Mwango's pattern for a while, and one thing I notice is that criticism seems to rattle her very quickly. When reactors said she has been deported and could not return to Poland, instead of simply addressing the issue calmly, she appeared to become so defensive. And this is where I think her ego may play a role. And this is why she wanted to prove to the world, I can still travel back to Poland. If someone tells you you can't go back there, the best response is not necessarily to become defensive and start reminding everyone how many countries you have traveled to. The better response is simple, to show the fact. So, D, if you entered Poland legally, there is nothing to be ashamed of. Explain the journey, show the fact, let people understand what happened, because when there are unexplained cuts in a video travel, people are naturally going to ask questions. The question isn't whether D Mwango has traveled 80 countries. The question is, how did D Mwango get into Poland this time round? And until that question is clearly answered, people are going to continue discussing the journey. That issue is what I see here. For me, I really believe D Mwango wanted to shame the reactor. That is why when D Mwango reached Poland, a subscriber texted me, Max, you said D Mwango will never get into Poland. There is so many ways of getting into a place without passing through the migration rules and everything, yeah? So guys, today I want us to talk about something that recently caught my attention concerning D Mwango and her return to Poland. And before I start, let me make something very clear. This is my own perspective. I'm not here to claim that D entered Poland illegally. I'm not an immigration officer. I'm not a Polish border official. I'm not saying I have evidence that she broke any law What I'm doing here is looking at the content she has shown us, looking at the sequence of events and start asking questions, because sometimes when you are a public figure and you put your life online, people are going to look at the details. Andy Mwango is somebody who has built a channel around traveling, showing people different countries, different airports, different experiences and different journeys. So naturally, when something about the journey is unclear, people are going to ask questions. And my question today is very simple. How exactly did Dimwango get into Poland? Because the journey we saw raises serious questions for me. Now, let me explain. We know Dee is in Poland. We see her there. We see her reuniting with the husband Pero. I know some people want me to say fake. Let me just put that one in quote. When you see them walking around, fine. But when you go back, look at the journey. There are certain gaps that I find something, and that is where my reaction begins. Dee is somebody who loves showing her travel journey. Whenever you watch her content, she often showing airports. She tells you where she is or where she has landed. She shows you the airport. She talks about the airport. She tells you what she thinks about the airport. For example, in this particular journey, we saw her in Doha, and she was giving us a whole narration about Doha Airport, including her own opinion that it is one of the biggest or the best airport in the world. That is what we know about Dimo. She likes documenting the journey. She likes showing us where she is. She likes showing us how she gets there. So when the journey suddenly changes from plane to train, and then there are cuts in the footage, naturally, I'm going to ask. I am not saying something illegal happened. I'm saying what happened. That is the question. Now, at the same point, we see Dee Mwango on a train, and she's talking about the train. She even compares the experience of traveling by train to traveling by aeroplane. And I am watching these and I'm thinking, wait a minute, how did we get here to the train? Because before that, we saw the airport, we saw Doha, we saw the flight, then suddenly we are on a train, and eventually we see Dee at the Pero in Poland. So I start looking at the sequence, and this is where my mind started asking questions. Could someone travel into Poland by train from another European country? Absolutely. There are railway connection between European countries. So traveling by train into Poland is not by itself suspicion. Let me repeat that. Traveling into Poland by train is not illegal. People travel across Europe by train every single day. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying. My question is not, can you enter Poland by train? Of course you can, depending on your circumstance and applicable immigration rule. My question is, what was the exact route? Where did she board the train? Which country did she come from? What happened at the border? What documents did she use? Was everything properly cleared? Those are legitimate questions when someone has previously faced question about their ability to return into a particular country. And this is where history becomes relevant, because if nobody had ever discussed the Poland situation before, perhaps people wouldn't be paying so much attention. This is the way people were paying a lot of attention about Dee Mwango's belly. When you see a video, the belly is not belly, it is now becoming a tummy. When you watch from another angle, you see now it is a flat thing. When you watch from another side, you see that she has tried to inflate the tummy to look like she's, even some people say, nowadays she's becoming huge and very big, yeah? That is why you can see even the face is not now facing. It is now taking another dimension because she's pregnant, yeah? Recently, she came on camera and said she had miscarriage. She wanted to do what we call damage control, but it backfired. And here I'm revealing to us how she got into Poland, because she wanted to shame the reactors. But we have been having discussions online actually about Di Mwango and Poland. There have been people saying that Di Mwango was deported. There have been reactors discussing whether she could return, and Di herself has responded to people who raise those kind of questions. And this way, I think, Di Mwango sometimes make things worse for herself, because instead of simply answering the question, she can become so defensive. Someone asks, why were you deported from her? And instead of simply saying, here is what happened, we get, how many countries have you traveled to? I have traveled to more than 20 countries without a repeat. If I try counting even the ones that have gone 2 times or have repeated, there'll be over 1 million countries. And I have to ask, what does traveling to 80 plus countries have to do with the question? Seriously, if somebody asks you about Poland, answer about Poland. If somebody asks you about immigration, answer the immigration question. If somebody asks you about deportation, explain whether it happened or it didn't happen. Your travel history does not automatically answer the question. You could travel to 180 countries and still have an immigration problem. In country number 181, yeah, those two things are completely separate. And this is why I think I have traveled to more than 80 countries. Argument is not a very strong defense, because traveling extensively does not make you superior to somebody asking a question. And this brings me to something else I have noticed about Dee. Sometimes I feel that she uses her achievement as her shield. Sometimes criticizes her, and sometimes it becomes, what or where have you been? I have traveled here, I have traveled there, and I have been to more than 80 countries. Okay, congratulations to you. Some of us, we only know about Kenya. We have never even traveled from the village to other counties, not even countries, to other counties. We were born in Migori County, in Kuria district. We have never walked out of this Kuria zone the way it is, because we don't have funds to get out of the village. And what are we going to explore? Let the primitivity in our mind remain intact. But that's not an issue. The issue is the question being asked. And I think public figures need to understand something. When you put your life online, not every question is an attack. Sometimes people are genuinely curious. Sometimes people are skeptical. Sometimes people misunderstand something, and sometimes people are deliberately provocative, but the response is still facts, but not humiliation, not you are poor, not where have you been, not I am better than you because I have traveled more. Just answer. That's what I will do. Now, let us go back to Poland. The video shows Di Mwango arriving by train. We then see her and Pero walking with the suitcase. And again, I'm looking at these and thinking, what happened between those scenes? Why was the part not shown? Was it simply because there was nothing interesting to film? Maybe. Was it because the footage was cut for time? Or maybe it was a restricted place? Or Was there another reason? I don't know. And that's exactly what I'm asking, and why I'm asking, because I don't have the answer and I'm not going to pretend that I do. This is where I disagree with people who immediately jump a missing piece of footage to define conclusion. No, we need evidence. If they travel legally, then great. If she went through proper immigration procedure, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. If she traveled from another CGM country by train and everything was in order, then again, what's the problem? But if there are questions about her immigration status, then the best person to clarify those questions is Dee herself, but Dee will never acknowledge that. That's all I'm saying. And Dee, if you are watching this, I know you'll be watching this video, you don't need to get angry. You don't need to attack me. You don't need to tell me how many countries I have traveled to. You don't need to ask me what passport I have. You don't need to tell me whether I have ever been to Europe. I've already said I've never got out of this Korea, and I'm not looking forward to get that because I don't have a passport. I also don't have money to board a plane. Also, I don't have resources to finance myself getting even from here to Kisii to Nairobi, so that even for me I can have some best time. That is why you can't even see me in Mombasa, because that is so expensive for me. I can't really afford that, and that remains me to be Maxwell Lumumba. So just answer the question, how did you get into Poland? Simple. Now, another thing I want to discuss is the psychology of reacting to criticism. And I want to be very careful here because I'm not a psychologist and I'm not here to diagnose, deal with anything. I'm simply talking about behavior that I have observed in her online interaction. To me, she sometimes appears to be very sensitive to criticism, and when somebody touches a sensitive subject, she becomes defensive very quickly. And when you are defensive, sometimes you end up saying more than what you needed to say. You can actually make a small question become a much bigger conversation. Imagine somebody asks you, did you have a problem entering Poland? And your answer is, I have traveled to 80 countries without a repeat. Where have you been? Now the audience is thinking, wait, why didn't she just answer that question? That's how things grow. And that's why I always advise public figures, don't fight every comment. Some comments don't deserve your energy. If somebody says something false, correct it calmly. If somebody asks a genuine question, answer it. If somebody insults you, ignore them, but don't let strangers on the internet control you, because once you become emotionally reactive, people know exactly which button to press. And that is something Dee needs to understand. You don't have to prove that you are better than everyone else. You don't have to prove that you have traveled more than everyone else. You don't have to prove that you have seen more in this world. Your content should speak for itself. Now, let us talk about the phrase, I want us, in the title. Dee invaded Poland. I want to explain exactly what I mean by that. I'm using invaded as dramatic YouTube language. I'm not literally accusing Dee of invading Poland. I'm not saying she crossed the borderline illegally. I'm not saying she sneaked across the border. Those are serious claims and you need evidence before making them. What I'm saying is that from the way the journey is presented, it creates a misery. She is suddenly back into Poland. She get there by train. there are cuts in the footage, and because there have previously been questions about her relationship with Poland and ability to return, people are naturally curious. That's where the drama comes from. And D has to understand that if you have traveled, or if you are a travel creator, people are going to examine your travels. You are a public figure. People are going to question your stories. That is the price of being online. You cannot have millions of eyes watching your life and then expect everybody to get accepted or everything without asking questions. Now, some people will say, why are you obsessed with the D? I'm not obsessed with the D Mwango in any way. I'm reacting to content that have been publicly posted. That is why, and that is what reactors do. If D Mwango posts something publicly, people are allowed to discuss it. I know some haters, some people will be like, Max, what are you saying? Yeah, that's the reality of what I'm saying. And my perspective is there are unanswered questions about this journey. That is it. Now, if tomorrow D comes out and explains, I traveled from this country, boarded this train at this station, crossed the border here, went through the necessary procedures, and arrived in Poland legally, fine. Question answered. I will move on. I'm not interested in creating a problem where there is none. And people know me of that. But what I don't like is when questions are answered with insult, because insults don't establish fact. If someone asks you, how did you get there? Saying, I have traveled to 80 countries, does not answer the question. If someone asks, were you deported? Saying, where have you traveled? Does not answer the question. If someone asks, how did you return to Poland? Showing your luxury lifestyle does not answer the question. Fact answer questions. And that is what I want from D Mwango. Now, let me also talk about the people watching this situation. Guys, don't turn these into harassment. We know people, like, I don't know, some people are very old, even they're calling themselves small, yeah? Don't come there in my comment section and start, hey, yeah, you don't know me, I'm called Doreen Small. Now it is time to change your name from being small to Doreen Big, or something of sort, yeah? Don't come and threaten me or threaten her. Don't attack a family. Don't invent stories. Don't claim something is the fact when we don't have evidence. We can't criticize somebody without becoming abusive. We can ask questions without spreading misinformation. And that is exactly what I'm doing here. I'm not, or I am asking questions. I'm giving my opinion and I'm saying, show us the journey, explain the journey. That's all. Because sometimes transparency actually kills the drama. If everything is perfect, legal and normal, explain it and make the controversy disappear. But when there is a gap, people will fill that gap with speculation, and that's why creators need to be very careful about what they show and what they leave and explain. Now, D has built a brand around travel. More than 80 countries, according to her own claims. Me, I don't know. That's a huge achievement. I'm not talking or taking that away from her. Traveling to that many countries is so impressive. Even for me, I would like one day I travel to country that way. But here's the thing. The more you present yourself as an experienced international traveler, the more people are going to expect you to understand immigration rules, border procedures, and the importance of documentation. So when people ask questions about your movement between countries, don't be surprised. You made travel your brand. Yeah. Why do you make something your brand? People are going to analyze the travel, and that's perfectly normal. My final point is this. D, you don't need to fight everybody. You don't need to prove you are better than somebody because you have traveled further. You don't need to shame somebody because they haven't traveled to the places where you have visited. Maybe someone commenting from a small village have never left the country or county like me. That does not make me less intelligent. That does not make my questions invalid, and it is certainly does not make you superior. Your passport is not your personality. The number of countries you have traveled or visited is not your value as a human being. So when somebody asks you a question, answer the question. And if you don't want to answer, simply say, I don't want to discuss that. That's better than attacking somebody. As for Poland, I'm leaving the question right here. How exactly did Di Mwango get into Poland? Was it by train? Which country did she come from? What was the exact route? Were everything properly documented? Did she pass through the quad checks? Those are the questions. Maybe that is perfectly innocent explanation. Maybe the answer is extremely simple. Maybe the train journey was completely normal. Maybe the footage was simply edited because not every minute of a journey needs to be shown. That is possible, but until we know, it remains a question, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that speculation is approved. That's where I draw a line. So guys, let me know, what do you think? Do you watch the journey into Poland? Did you notice the same gaps that I noticed? Do you think the train journey was completely normal, or do you think this should explain the route more clearly? And remember, disagree with me if you want. That's what YouTube is about. But let's keep discussion respectful. Don't abuse Di Mwango. Don't make false accusations. Don't harass anybody. Just look at the content. Look at the timeline and ask questions. And make your own mind. For me, the biggest lesson here is simple. When you live your life publicly, transparency matters. When people ask questions, facts always become stronger than insult. That is my perspective. I'll leave it there. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay respectful, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye for now. Goodbye.